Let's go. Episode 34, I believe. I'm like 95% sure we're at episode 34. We got Alex Balizado. Zado? How do you say it, man?
Zado.
Is it Balizado?
You were almost there, bro.
What type of name is that?
It's Filipino.
Okay, nice. I'm gonna just pin this real quick. Sorry, on the Instagram. So my man was on here on a Facebook. We were like on a Jamil call. I was talking to Jamil about how to get super high level people onto this podcast. And he's just there, just like, wait a minute, I'm super high level. Maybe I should just get on this podcast. And so that's basically how you're seeing the man. Oh, they're seeing the man, the myth, the legend here right now. So, bro, for the people that don't know you, what do you do? Like, what's your business?
Yeah. First of all, appreciate you having me on. It was definitely a moment of fate, I think. Jamil brought us together, as he always does. But yeah, good question. So myself and Thomas Martinez, who I'm sure some of your listeners know who he is, also a beast. He's a legend. So we run 19 KeyGlee franchises.
Whoa. Guys, do you guys know? Okay, so first off, explain what that is for some people, because people don't understand what that even means. Like how big of a team you guys probably freaking have if you're running 19 of them. Like, what does that mean? What is that? What does that mean, and why'd you do it?
Yeah, fantastic question. So what that means is it means that a lot of times we run around like chickens with our heads cut off.
Love it.
But what it looks like sort of day to day is we're wholesaling just like KeyGlee wholesales in a lot of different places nationwide. So I don't know if a lot of people know this. As far as I know, Thomas was the very first franchise in Las Vegas, Nevada. Yeah. So fun fact of the day. So we started off with just one store. Basically, like, all right, we could go crazy with this thing. A little bit of the backstory. When I first met Jamil and he introduced the concept of KeyGlee, he basically said, my vision is seeing that little blue house in all 50 states. And so that's something that has always kind of sat with me. And when the franchise...
So the little blue house is their logo, right?
That's yeah.
Okay.
The little blue house with the key in it.
All right. And then the 19, so they own 19 franchises of this company in all sorts of different markets.
Yeah.
What's so special about KeyGlee? Like, why do you want 19 franchises of theirs? Why not McDonald's?
Ooh,
that's what the people want to know.
That is the $1 billion question potentially. Phenomenal question. No one has actually ever asked us that, I don't think. So impressive. But yeah, no, it's a great question. And I think we're a little bit unique in the sense of Thomas and I, like we already knew Jamil. We've known Josiah for years, worked very closely with them.
The CEOs of the company, guys. People who run the company.
Yeah. So obviously, you could buy franchises of anything. Wholesale real estate, which is what KeyGlee franchises are, primarily wholesale real estate investment. It's a very unique niche, and there's an amazing community that kind of comes built in with working with KeyGlee. So we haven't even touched on this yet. I'm sure we will later at some point, but getting into the KeyGlee network means you get access to the Astro flipping community, to the sub 2 community. You don't really get that with anything else in any industry. It's a very unique culture, and it's you start out with a community rooting for you to succeed. You can't find that anywhere. That's super unique.
True. So what is it? Like what do you get? Why is someone buying one? What is a KeyGlee franchise?
Yeah. That's another good question. It's a little bit interesting because we refer to them as stores. You know, kind of like if you buy let's say a Chick-fil-A franchise, right? You have
Hmm.
your store. You know, maybe you have a store number, or it's like the store on this street. So we call them stores, but really, what you're snagging is, well, the biggest thing obviously is being able to say, "I'm KeyGlee." In the wholesale real estate industry, that carries a tremendous amount of weight. So that's huge for us, being able to use that logo, the branding, having Jamil do marketing and bringing us leads. That's a huge value. But you also get access to the training, the systems, and the biggest thing obviously is buyers. Kegley specializes in kind of the dispo or dispositions, the selling side of wholesale, basically. And that's a pretty big benefit. You know, you get leads dropped in. Um, so it's not what you traditionally think of with franchises, right? Where you think you get a store, throw some employees in there, see what happens. So it's definitely not like that. I think people maybe have that
So what do you
misconception.
get? It's leads.
So yeah, so you get leads, you get systems, and I think that if you're trying to scale, you can't possibly um, realize how valuable that is until you're in it. Having
Systems
a
are what a business is. A
Yeah,
business is just a
huge,
system. People don't understand that, like, that literally is what it is.
100%. Yeah, I'm glad you realize that. It speaks volumes
Trust
of
me.
where your business is at, I think. But yeah, especially like sort of solo entrepreneurs, they don't even know what that's like. And then as soon as you try to hire someone, it's like,
Yeah.
I need systems.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you're just like you said it yourself. That's the phrase I always use, is running with my like a chicken running with its head chopped off. It's a very
Yep,
similar to that.
100%.
So you get systems, leads, anything else?
Systems, leads. Um, this one is sort of hard to explain, but I like to describe it as access. It's kind of like how if you join, this might be a horrible way of describing it, but sort of like if you join certain organizations, you get access to like an upline. I don't know if
Mm.
people are familiar with that concept,
No,
but
I'm not familiar with it. What's an upline?
yeah, so it's basically just like if I join maybe an organization that sells a certain thing, I'll get access to the person who recruited me and all the people that have sort of gone up the chain. So that's kind of how EXP Realty is set up. So like if you join EXP, whoever the agent was that brought you in, you get pulled into what they call an upline, sort of like a family tree. So let's
Hmm.
say there's a really high performing agent in their family tree or their upline. You now get their contact information. You can ask them questions, sort of like masterminding with them. So in a way, that's what Kegley brings you. Because if you don't know these high level individuals, you get pulled into that orbit. And the same applies for getting pulled into the astro flipping orbit or the subject to orbit. Um, you get pulled in, and now all of a sudden you have access to these individuals that you maybe never would have met, couldn't work with. And now, just by being a part of this community and being a franchise owner, you get brought into that and embraced, which is huge.
I love that. Okay, cool. So it's an interesting idea. Like, who is the right type of person to buy a franchise, right? I feel like there's a specific type of person
Mm.
that like
Mhm.
would it serves the best. Who do you think that is? Like, if you could describe the person who should buy a franchise, whether it's Kegley or anybody else.
Sure. Yeah. Oh man, that is a phenomenal question. Because you could go really deep or really narrow with that. Um, so I'll try not to get too lost in the weeds, but I think the the perfect person to get into franchising is somebody who has a sort of a heart or a leaning towards being an entrepreneur, but maybe feels like they're missing something. Whether that be support or accountability or knowledge, even. Because honestly, that's a lot of what franchise is, or even just buying a course, right? Is getting that knowledge.
Right.
Because you can use that over and over and over again. It's the gift that keeps on giving. And I think if I had to boil it down to like something simple, I think it would be kind of like somebody who really wants to get into business, but for whatever reason they feel like they can't. I think franchising kind of bridges that can't, and takes you to the door, and kind of you can go from there.
Okay, I like it. Cool. It's just interesting, like the franchise model. I mean,
Mhm.
KeyGlee like the only I know them, and then the We Buy, and then what's the one Pace used to be a part of?
Homevestors.
Homevestors. Those are the
Yeah.
only two franchises I know about, basically, in
Mhm.
real estate.
Yeah.
Very different models. One's
Super
like
different.
acquisitions and one's dispositions, but nonetheless,
Mhm.
those are like the only ones, and they both seem pretty cool. Definitely seem like it's right for the right person.
Mhm.
So let's go into your story a little bit. How'd you get into real estate?
The Steve Trang question.
Steve
Let's
Trang
go,
question. Right? So
baby.
how'd you
Yeah.
get into real estate?
So it's definitely interesting. Hopefully, the most interesting answer so far. So I have known Josiah, CEO of KeyGlee, for a very, very long time.
Are
Almost
you in
10
Phoenix?
years. I am in Phoenix, yeah.
Are you in their offices? It almost looks like their offices.
It's not. We used to be. We
When
were
I say
working.
there, guys, I mean the KeyGlee offices. I've been
Yeah,
to the KeyGlee offices. It looks very similar to
yeah.
where he is right now.
We're like 20 minutes south. Super
Okay.
close.
Okay.
Super duper close. Yeah,
Phoenix, Arizona.
yeah. It's actually a very nice day as well.
Love
So
it. Sorry, keep going.
no, you're good.
You
We
knew
used to
Josiah.
work in their office. Before they moved, our team got too big. We had to leave. And then they moved into a like ginormous space. So now it's kind of funny. But so anywho, yeah. I have known Josiah for almost 10 years.
Nice.
So we met. I was dating his youngest sister, who actually is now my
Wow.
wife.
Amazing.
Yeah, so I met him when he was like first getting into real estate.
Interesting.
Yeah, and so I I didn't really know what to think of him at first. I was like, okay, this guy, like, he seems super ambitious. He's got a lot of big dreams. I didn't really know what he did because I was in college at the time. And then he posted on Facebook. He was like, hey, I need someone to help out in my business. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I was in college, but I wasn't sure where I was going. So I was like, sure, I'll help out. Came home for Christmas break, showed up at his house.
Is this
Hunter,
just a random Facebook post? Is that how you met him?
I knew him before that, but I hadn't really interacted with him.
But so the first time was through a Facebook post or
Yeah,
something.
pretty much through social media. We had followed each other, been friends for a little
Okay.
while, but we never really talked.
All right.
So yeah, reached out. He was like, sure, come roll up to my house on Monday. Show up to the house. He's in there. There's a whiteboard, like nailed to the wall, basically.
Right.
And then Hunter was also there. Hunter, the now CFO of KeyGlee, was also there. I didn't really know what they were doing, to be honest. I was like, is this legit? Like, what is this? So I started out actually just doing like super basic stuff like data entry. I didn't even know it was real estate until like a week later, maybe. I was slow on the uptick at the time.
What year is this?
I want to say this was 2016.
This is pre-Jamil.
Yeah, this is like, I think so. I met Jamil probably like 2 or 3 weeks after I started working with Josiah and Hunter at Sip Coffee in downtown Phoenix. And I was like, oh my gosh, this Jamil guy is pretty intense. But he was like the chillest dude ever. Like he rolls up and like I don't even remember what he was driving at the time. It was a fancy car. And like I was like, okay, bro, college student, very impressed. Who the heck is this guy?
Right.
But he was just the nicest dude ever. And I was like, okay, there's something pretty magical that's going on here. And then Kegley, sort of the name Kegley, came about maybe a month or so after that. So I was very privileged to sort of meet these guys and be mentored by them from the very beginning.
Right.
Which is pretty cool. Like I feel
Cool.
super blessed that I can say that. Because I've known them for years. I've seen the highs and the lows, horrible haircuts, anything hilarious or amazing that you can think of.
Mm-hmm.
I was probably there for that. So
nice, love it. So you got in through Kegley.
Through the OGs, yeah.
Yeah. So you were working for them as data entry for how many years?
So I did data entry for, it was probably only 6 months.
Also, what made you respond?
Oh, good question.
So that Facebook post, that's kind of interesting.
So it's actually, yeah, it's funny that you asked that. I'm like thinking back through it. Why did I respond? I didn't want to respond. So, like I said, his youngest sister, who is now my wife, was like, "Hey, my brother is hiring. Go respond to this post." And I was like, I was looking for an internship at the time. I was studying international relations, which is like business and politics. I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life.
Right.
And yeah, I don't know what it was.
Just like, screw it. My girl said, try it out, whatever.
Yeah, I was like, all right, what the heck? Let's see how this goes.
Cool. All right, so keep going. So you're working for KeyGlee. Eventually, you're doing data entry, and then how do you end up?
Yeah.
Where do you keep going?
So started out, did data entry, hated it. It was horrible.
Yeah,
but
sounds
necessary.
super boring.
Yeah, a lot of spreadsheets. But within about a few months, I had gone back to college, but I knew that I wanted to come back just because I wanted to keep working with those guys. I didn't care what it was. I just knew something amazing is going on here and I need to be in it. So instead of getting an internship for summer, which I was supposed to do, I said, all right, I'm going to come back and work for you guys. And that's when I moved into dispositions. So that was my job. I worked while I was in school.
As a dispositions manager.
Yes. So I was doing straight sales to buyers for all the way through the rest of college. And then when I graduated and came back, I took over as head of the dispositions team. So that was fun.
That's dope.
Super fun.
What attracted you to dispositions? Was it more just like they told you to do it, or was there a reason?
There was a need, and I didn't know what I was doing, but I was willing to just give it a shot. Luckily, very blessed because I literally got trained by Josiah and Jamil and Hunter on how to sell. So that was amazing. Probably the best training that I could have ever gotten. Probably. Right. So I think I realized maybe like, okay, I don't know if I'm going to be any good at this, but these guys are really good. So if I just do what they do, maybe I'll be good too.
It's a pretty good way to do it, is just find someone who's good at it and then just be around them. I think that's like literally what most people should do. I think that's the idea of being in a course. That's the idea of mentorships or masterminds, is just be around the people who are successful and trying to do what you do and then just copy them. I've learned that's literally the best way to become as successful as possible quickly.
Yeah, sort of that sponge, like let's soak it up method. Yeah.
Yeah. So keep going. So okay. So you're getting trained in dispositions.
Hmm.
You're like, this is cool, but I'd like to own my own business eventually at some point.
Not really, actually.
Okay.
I I never really saw myself in that role, to be honest. I think like the sort of the upbringing that I had was more traditional in the sense of like you go to school, you get a degree, you work a job, you climb the ladder, you retire, end of story. So that's kind of what I saw myself doing was
Okay.
okay, maybe I can make this my career, even though it's a startup, it still feels safe. Um, so that's what I thought I was going to do, to be honest. And then they rolled out the idea of franchising. I was like, I didn't even know you could franchise wholesale real estate. So that's weird. But cool. Wasn't interested in it really. Had no desire to be involved. Then enter Thomas. So this is where it gets
Dun
fun.
dun dun.
Dun, dun, dun. Yeah. So Thomas worked in acquisitions when I was in dispositions. So we had already known each other for probably a couple of years at the time. So we were homies. Um, but when he moved into franchising, I was like, wow, I've never seen somebody take that big of a leap and bet on themselves. That's cool. At least no one in my sort of immediate circle. So I stayed in my role as the dispositions lead while Thomas sort of started up the Las Vegas store. We had kind of had conversations about how the business was going, what he liked, how he was growing the team. And I was like, I think I can help. Um, so we had some conversations, just me and Thomas. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to think about this and see if this move makes sense. Because I didn't even know if I was going to be
What is the
allowed.
move? What are you talking about?
Um, Jumping ship basically to go to a franchise. Because I was working for the corporate store at the time, so I didn't even know if it would be allowed. So I was
Right.
like, okay, I feel like I could help and add value here, but do I want to leave relative stability? Is it even allowed? So I talked to Thomas. He was like, I think I could use your help, but it's up to you.
Well, so wait, let's go into that conversation a little bit because I
Sure.
like hearing the conversations between integrators and visionaries. And
Hmm.
so we were talking right before this. You consider yourself an integrator, but you don't mind like showing your face. Like you're not an introvert, is what I understood it as, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So what was that conversation like? Like how what made it feel like you could add something to him, he could add something to you?
Yeah. It's interesting because I had just started reading some of Gino Wickman's stuff like in the month or two before. So I read Traction, I read Rocket Fuel. So those concepts of the visionary and the integrator, they were pretty new to me at the time. Um, but I had a sort of a vague idea of what it meant. And
Mhm.
I could kind of look at Thomas to a T and be like, oh yeah, that guy's the visionary. He's a huge dreamer. He can literally take nothing and make it into something. But I also saw some of the maybe pain points that visionaries experience with building out structure and systems and scaling. And that's something that I feel like my mind is very attuned to. Seeing KeyGlee sort of grow and helping put some structures in place. So that was kind of the conversation as we were staying at the office late one day. I was looking at the team's stats. Thomas was making calls. We just started talking business. I was like, hey, how's everything going with your franchises? He told me about his vision to own basically all of them. And I was like, wow, that's big. That's big.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. And I was like, okay, like how are you gonna do it? Like, what's the plan? And he was like, what do you mean? Like, I'm just gonna do it.
I love it. There has to
Um,
be a plan, though. You got to come up
yeah,
with
and
something.
that's when the gears started turning for me. I was like, okay, well, if I was in that position, how would I do it? And so we started talking about that, and maybe there was some sort of magic movie moment or something where we both looked at each other and the light bulbs went off, and we're
I
like,
love
wait a
it.
second, this could be it.
Cool.
Beginning
Okay.
of the dream
So
team.
then you're debating whether to jump ship or not. What happens? Because you got
Hmm.
to talk to Jamil and Josiah about it. And it is kind of weird because they're the
Ooh.
owners of the corporate store. You're kind of
Hmm.
getting poached to a franchisee almost.
Yeah, which that's literally those words exactly are what I was super scared to hear. Because and I know this now being on the other side, but apparently the rules and regulations of franchising are super strict.
Right.
So like you said, poaching, that's a real thing. So like franchises and corporate stores are not really supposed to like exchange staff. That's not a thing. It's not good. You're not supposed to do that. And I didn't know that, but I did feel some sort of guilt, I think. So I was definitely nervous to have that conversation.
Right.
So um I talked to Hunter first, actually, and I was like, hey, you're a smart guy. Just as a friend, is this a good idea or a bad idea? And he was like, do you feel like you need to do it? And I said, yeah. And so he said, okay, go talk to Josiah and Jamil. Let's make it happen. If it happens, you have my blessing. Um, so from there, I reached out to Josiah. We sat down. I was super nervous for that. I'm not going to lie. I was like, oh man, how is this going to go? But, typical Josiah fashion, if you know the guy, he was just chillest dude in the world. He was like, if this could potentially benefit everyone, so let's see how it goes. And I was like, wow, that was way easier than I thought it was going to be.
Talk about that for a second because I think that's super interesting how we do that as humans a lot of times is create these
Mm,
stories in our own head about like what's going to happen when we ask somebody or do something, right? Like talk about that. Like I don't know
mhm.
if you have any words of wisdom for people, but I've always thought about how it's crazy how we tell ourselves stories of how bad something's going to be when
Mhm.
it's almost never as bad as we think it's going to be. Usually things that
Yeah,
happen really bad to us, we have no idea they're coming, generally speaking.
dude, that is spot on. Spot on. Seriously, like, yeah, all of the weird or like strange bad things that happen, it's like you probably can't plan for that anyways.
Right. So how'd you
So,
get the courage to do that?
um, well, I prayed about it. I asked for advice from somebody. I talked to my wife about it. I talked to Hunter about it. Um, because yeah, so like Hunter and I have been pretty close for a long time. Um, I think I sort of gravitated toward the way his brain worked because I feel like mine works kind of the same way.
Mhm.
So before I got married, but once I had moved out of my parents' house, I actually was Hunter's roommate. A lot of people don't know that.
Hmm.
But so that was interesting. But
You're
I
Kegley family, literally.
literally, yeah, um, yeah, literally. So I think if I were to sort of share my take on it, looking back, it would be just don't project what you think onto someone else because they're not you. And I think that
Right.
was the mistake that I made going in is I was like, okay, if I were this person, this is how I would see it. But I'm not them. And
Right.
I didn't realize that until much later on is that I was totally projecting my fears about the future, my concerns about what might go wrong onto somebody who didn't even have the same thoughts at all. Um, And I think we do that a lot in real estate too, whether we're talking to buyers or sellers or anyone. If you project onto them, you're not even having a conversation with them. You're just talking to yourself and like worst case scenario you.
Right.
Yeah, that's a phenomenal question because you're right. Like it's very human to do that, right?
We always do it. I feel like it's the thing that screws me up the most in real estate is when I'm thinking I have to like negotiate with somebody, or if I'm thinking about doing something with an employee and being like, screw, damn it, like how do I do this right without seeming like a complete asshole? Right.
Yeah.
And I shouldn't be swearing, like, sorry, YouTube, but whatever.
We'll bleep
Like
it
just
out in
like
post.
but like yeah, like it's just something to think about. And I think it's something that a lot of people do when they're just starting in this business of like how they're even gonna start with these sellers is they project themselves on sellers or they project themselves on wholesalers or whatever or buyers or any part of it. So yeah, like it's something you got to get out of. And I think I don't know, like I feel like it's just experience of just doing it. That's how I've done it, just being like we're just gonna have to do it and see what happens.
Yeah,
And it's 95% of the time not as bad.
that's true. That is
Yeah.
very true. And I think that's what I like actually about um, the name that you chose for this podcast. Because I was thinking about that coming on, is I was like, man, that literally like if you just take the title of the podcast, Skorch the Fears, little plug. But if you just take that approach to everything you're worried about, just kind of burn the ships, light it on fire, leave it behind you, and see what happens. That alone can get you so far. It's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah. There's a lot of good imagery that I try to get with this podcast. The logo is the idea of the campfire effect of like doing it together and like burning the fears together. I
Love
don't
it.
know. I'm like I'm hiring somebody to create a new logo, so I might go over with him about like what if we just did like a burning ship? How would that go over?
That could be sick. That
would be
I do like the
balling.
campfire though.
That would be balling, but that would also be aggressive, I feel like.
Super
I feel like I
aggressive.
don't feel like burning the ships is good for everybody. I
That's
think
true. Yeah.
certain people it's a good thing, and then some people it's just gonna lead them into like misery.
Yeah.
I don't know. It depends on the person.
It's a good
But
point.
anywho, okay. So they're into it. You leave. How did you structure it? Because Thomas already owns some of the business. Like what do you do?
Yeah. So that's a good question. Kind of coming in, the way that I wanted to approach it was very much out of respect for what he had already built. Coming on as an integrator, what I thought my first job was just figure out what he has going on right now and what can I do to add value.
Right.
So like the first week, I didn't really do anything, to be honest. Like I just kind of wanted to sit with the team in the systems, see what they were doing, see how they were doing stuff. I didn't want to say anything. I didn't want to sway people any certain way. I really just wanted to kind of soak it up and try to identify as many inefficiencies and weaknesses as possible and then start to strategically attack those. And luckily, Thomas was totally down with that, to just have me sit there and like stare at what was happening and be a little bit creepy. But I think you kind of have to do that as an integrator. Otherwise, you can't help. So luckily, Thomas was cool and he just rolled with it. And then from there, that's after that sort of first week, 2-week period, that's when I was like, okay, here's what I think we need to do in order for us to hit the targets that you want to hit. And then we just kind of rolled with it from there.
I like it. So what were those? Like, so how'd you like what were the targets? What was like missing in the business? Like what you identify and what do you think? Because I mean 1 to 19 is a huge freaking difference.
It's massive.
That's freaking huge. Like what do you think made that happen?
Well, the nice thing is that when you have a visionary whose will is just insanely strong, I really think you can accomplish anything.
Right.
And I think that is the power of sort of the pairing of the visionary and the integrator is if you get two who sort of click, because you don't always click. Luckily,
Right.
Thomas and I clicked almost immediately, which thank God, otherwise it would have been rough. But that helped a lot. But sort of going in, I looked at, okay, what is the foundation of the business right now? And where do we want to go? So at first, it was just go from one to more than one, which happened pretty quick. Thomas pulled that off basically on his own because he's just a boss like that. But from there, I was like, okay, if we want to scale, do we know where we want to go? So a lot of it actually started with looking at, okay, what are some sort of promising markets? What does the data look like on that? What are the rules there with like licensing, wholesaling?
Mm-hmm.
What's the risk if we go into a market we don't know? Are there enough leads there? So I think a lot of it going in was just getting very technical with, okay, if we want to have one and then two and then five or more, let's focus on where we should go first. Because, we could want 50 or 100, but we can't just throw a dart at a map and pick a city. It's, we have to be strategic about what's the value that we see in this city versus this one, and kind of going from there.
Right. I gotcha. So it was just figuring out how to get as many as you can. I mean, that's
That,
the overarching goal, right? That's what he was saying is like, I want to own all of them, which is
yeah,
hilarious. But what does he even mean by that? Because he can't own all of them. Like he has to, like he can't, like he can be in every city.
right,
Like eventually,
right.
there's gonna be some people who are like, no, I want to keep my KeyGlee franchise.
Yeah. And so I think it was also maybe adding a little bit of seasoning to that initial vision of, okay, what does all of them mean? Is it just a lot? Okay, how many is a lot? Turns out 19 is a lot. Like it's really a lot of work and it takes a lot of manpower. So that was a big component of it too, was being like, okay, not only how do we grow this, but how do we grow this in a way that is um, sustainable? Because I think like with scaling anything, you run the risk of the business collapsing in on itself if you grow too fast. So that was something that there's always the push and pull of let's race forward and do as much as possible. And then I'm kind of back here like, wait, let's be careful about this. Is this in budget or not? Like, so
Yeah, I like that.
there's
That's funny. That seems like the natural visionary to integrator thing in
mhm.
general of like, are we actually able to do this right now or not?
Yeah.
Um, I like it a lot. So, okay. So you weren't even thinking about you necessarily ever would be an entrepreneur. It just kind of happened.
Yeah. Honestly, I was kind of scared of it and I didn't understand people who did it. I was like, those guys are weird. That's not me. I don't do that.
Right.
And I think part of it was just like I mentioned earlier, growing up, I sort of had a very traditional idea of what a career path should look like. And
And
so I
what
just
changed your
never,
ideas on that? Because that's like that's a
ooh,
limiting belief, is what I see it. And then what changed
yeah.
it? Was it literally just meeting Thomas and believing in his vision, or was it something else?
Um, I think that was a huge component of it. I think maybe subconsciously seeing Josiah and Jamil and Hunter build it definitely informed that as well and kind of helped break that belief. I don't think I realized it until later on, but obviously they're super high level, very successful now. And if I were to like looking back, I was like, yeah, these guys are smart, but they're normal, they're just like
Right.
me. There's nothing special about them other than the fact that obviously like they're amazing and smart dudes and work
Right. But
super
anybody,
hard.
but basically anybody could do it, is what you're saying.
Exactly. Yeah. And I don't think I realized that until later, but seeing them literally pave the path that they were walking on, I was like, okay, I mean, they're normal. They're not superheroes, like they're not from space as far as I know. But okay, they could do it. Anyone could do it. I can do it. Maybe I could do that too. And then I think Thomas sort of gave me that push over the ledge that was like, hey, I'm already doing it. Just come on board. I was like, all right.
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
It's cool. It's interesting because I feel like people's journeys to entrepreneurship are so different that I think yours is kind of interesting because it's like, it's not accidental. Like it wasn't like 100% accidental. Do you think if you'd never met Thomas, do you think there would have been a point where you actually did start your own business?
Ooh, oh man, dude, you are hitting with the fire questions today.
Well, I'm curious. That's one of that is my superpower. It's with sellers and buyers and people is asking questions. It's why I'm like, man, I really should just do a podcast. Like, why not?
Dude, absolutely. Oh, so fire. Yeah. I think that the answer might still be yes, but I do not think it would have happened nearly as soon as it did.
Right.
I think that he was sort of that kick in the pants to like, just do it now. Just do it now.
Yeah. Right.
I think maybe the seeds had been planted in some conversations with Josiah and Jamil and Hunter earlier on, but I had never gotten that external push, and I don't think I had the internal desire at the time. So I think it's possible that it would have happened, but definitely not this early in life. Maybe like 20, 30 years down the road, maybe something like that, but definitely not this soon.
Gotcha. Cool. Yeah, no, that makes sense. Like, yeah, I feel like it's just interesting to me because I'm the visionary type. So it's very, it depends on the person, right? Like for me, it was the exact opposite of you in the sense of like, I don't think I could be an employee for that long. Like, okay. I'm just like, I don't think that would work for me because like I was like, I think I'd rather just die doing a business at this point. Like it's just gonna. Like, I think I'd rather be broke for a good 5 years. Then I found out about real estate. I'm like, oh, this is amazing. I won't have to be broke for even that long. Let's
go. Yeah,
like, you're that's like, the thing about real estate is like you can get pretty solidly wealthy pretty quickly.
Absolutely.
Like if you look even Josiah, Jamil, and Hunter and them, like it's how long have they been in business? 7 years? 8 years?
Yeah.
They run like a company that's got to be worth like 50 million or something. I have no idea. Like, I don't know how much money they make, but like, it's ridiculous.
Spectacular. And that short of a span of time. Yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah. Which is nuts. It is pretty darn crazy. So I don't know. Real estate is amazing, but okay. So let's keep going though. So then it was just, what was the next challenge? Like you meet up with them, you guys own 2 stores. What were like the biggest challenges when you guys were starting off? Like, did Thomas have any employees at that point? Was it just you two at that point? What did the business look like when you joined?
Yeah. So when I joined, I think there were probably about 5 or 6 people who he had at the time that were doing acquisitions and dispositions. And so the challenge from there really was, okay, what sort of internal support do we need in order to scale? Because obviously the nice thing about KeyGlee is there's a lot of support that just comes with being KeyGlee. So like you have, people who are willing to give you feedback, to teach your team, train them, etc. But in terms of like building out an operations team, having transaction coordinators in-house to be able to cope with the volume of deals that we were doing. That was really the first big challenge, is figure out, okay, if we want to grow, what's the foundation we have to lay before we just hire, 10 more people to do acquisitions and dispositions and just see what happens. Right. So that was very much a puzzle that we had to solve, I think, early on, was just trying to forecast, sort of look into the crystal ball and be like, okay, if we want to do this many stores, we'll need this much money to support it with this many people, maybe, and trying to be as scientific as possible. while still realizing we basically had no idea what we were doing.
Right.
So that was fun.
I love it. It's cool. So then, what was the next step? Like, was it just like how much how do you do it? Like, do you just slowly hire people? I mean, when did you get this is only within a year and a half, 2 years?
Yeah, so we've been at it for just under 2 years.
Right. So like that's pretty dang cool. Like how did you go from like buying more and more stores, I guess? Like so
Mhm.
what was the goal and then you could buy another store?
Yeah.
Like
Um,
when were you like, okay, we're ready to buy another store? Was it a money thing? Was it a manpower thing?
um, it was mostly a manpower thing, and a lot of this was mostly our comfort level with our current Ac and Dispo teams was feeling confident that they knew enough to be able to do their jobs every day without one of us sitting there telling them what to do. And if we felt like we could do that, then we felt like, okay, now might be time.
Hmm.
So it's not only a manpower thing. I think it's also an aptitude or a tenure thing for certain key members of the team. Because that's the nice thing about growing is on the one hand, you kind of have to sort of take your hands off some stuff and trust people to do it. But on the other hand, if you have them trained well enough, you suddenly get freedom to either scale or go lie on the beach and drink margaritas, whatever you want to do. Um, so delegating, I think, helped get us there, but it took a lot of trust building with our team to be able to do that. And that's hard.
Right.
That's super hard.
Well, how do you do it?
That's a good one. That is a good one. Yeah, well, I think the phrase that I like to use is trust but verify. Um,
Hmm.
with the asterisk that you have to make the right hires. Because if you don't, then the system is flawed to begin with.
Right.
And that's another topic that is, I think it presents its own challenges is hiring.
Right.
But yeah, in order to build a foundation of trust, I think with your team, you kind of have to give them something. You have to give them a task and say, okay, I'm going to trust you to do this. I'm not going to look until it's done and just trust that it's going to happen. Sometimes it goes exactly the way you want it to. Sometimes it's horrible. And sometimes they come up with a better way to do it than you would have.
Right.
And then it's like, okay, sweet. That was bomb. So it's, I think, having the trust in them to say, okay, I've taught you this. Now go do it and then show me what you did. And I think if you do that enough times with the right people, that's the sort of a good way to build that out.
Okay. Cool. I like that. Um, so okay. So like what do you think is the biggest challenge of scaling? Like I'm just curious. Like when you were going from a 6-person team, that's literally actually where I'm at damn near. I have
Nice.
7 or 8 people
Let's
now,
go. Dude,
which is
that is
cool.
amazing.
Thanks, man. Which
That
is
is
cool.
awesome.
But it is interesting of like, okay, so how to like I'm interested because I know my challenges. So I'm interested like when you guys
Mhm.
were in that place, like what were the challenges you were having?
I would also love to know what you think the answer to this question is. So I
I'll
definitely
answer it
want to.
afterwards.
Okay, sweet. Mostly because I'm curious, but I think for us, the biggest problem we had was we were so ambitious that we tried to hire too fast.
Hmm.
And looking back, that's probably the only thing that I would have changed is the tempo and the pace of our hiring. Um, because I think if you are rushing, it's always dangerous. And so I think what happened is we kind of tried to pull in as many people as possible, but that wasn't really the best because we weren't able to provide the support that we wanted, and we probably hired some people that we shouldn't have hired. And so I think there's sort of two dangers to hiring too fast. One being you might make some bad hires, and the second one being providing adequate support to your team. Those were the two things that we really struggle with. But yeah, I'm super curious to hear your thoughts on that.
I definitely feel adequate, like not providing enough support to my team is an interesting one, because the issue is I'm almost out of every single role.
Nice.
I'm hiring a dispo manager, to anybody who's watching. So like if you're looking to work for a dispo manager, but this person has to live in Northern California, has to be either in Sacramento or the Bay Area.
Nice. Hit him up, everybody. Let's
hit
go.
Hit me up to anybody watching. But mine is just putting my brain in their brain, is how I describe it, is being like, all right, do you really get what I want you to do?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if you do or don't. And it's also because I'm a visionary type, right? So like, imagine if you weren't there to really go through the systems with your employees. Imagine if Thomas was just like, all right, team, we have these 6 deals, go get them.
Yep.
I'm gonna go get 15,000 in private money or something, or 15 million. Well, you go do that, or do whatever the hell like a visionary is gonna do to get to the next step. So that's like the hard part for me, is like I run off somewhere and then I'm like, wait a minute, did anybody check in on like, do you know what you're doing? Like, did this actually happen?
That's a good one. That's really good. Yeah.
That's been my biggest struggle. And like, I'm learning who I can trust more to be like, okay, this is actually getting done. Being like, okay, I don't know if you can get this done. Because I'm also starting to realize like the importance of the personality types is so much more important than the experience. Again, the personality types in the right place, I've started learning. So I'm trying to get everyone in the right place, where the personality is working for what they're good at. And that's been the struggle recently. So it's that, and then like I'm very close. I just need to find the right disposition manager. I've got like 1 or 2 that I'm pretty interested in. There's one guy, I think I'm going to hire him. I'm going to do, unless this interview goes really well with one other guy.
Right on.
If it doesn't, then I'm going to hire this guy. But I don't know yet. We'll see. So yeah, that's my answer to that question, basically. So what are your goals now? What's the company goal now?
Good question. Yeah, I think it's shifted a little bit.
19's enough.
Yeah, man. Turns out it's a lot. So
you guys should buy one more just to say 20. That's just a good number.
That is a good number. I know. I'm like, okay, if we were gonna do that, what market would it be? Maybe we'd go into California. I don't know.
Do it. Like Thomas owned one in Sacramento for a while. I don't know if he changed that one. I think something happened in California where KeyGlee had to get pulled out or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. That was right around the time when we had just started scaling, and it turns out we sort of started doing some work there, but the franchise agreement hadn't been approved in the state of California.
Right.
So we were like, oh crap, okay, we can't do this. Let's go somewhere else. So KeyGlee was like, okay, let's move you guys somewhere else. And we just have never gotten back into California.
Come to Sacramento, man. That would be fun.
Dude, I feel like I hear a lot of great things about Sacramento.
I like Sacramento. And my 2 markets are Sacramento and the Bay Area. And Sacramento, I think, is better for most people. The Bay Area is just like, okay, we're just going to get one ginormous deal every once in a while. While like Sacramento is like, let's just actually have some consistency in the business.
Gotcha.
Like let's get $50K a month instead of like $100K every 2 months on one deal.
Yeah.
Where it's just like so like stressful type of thing. like that's the Bay Area. It ends up being the same, but it's rough emotionally in comparison.
Oh, I believe it.
So okay. What was the question I just asked you? I think it was something like, What are your goals?
Oh
So,
yeah.
yeah, what are your goals right now?
Yeah, sorry, I got a little sidetracked.
No, it's okay.
But I think actually something that you touched on is really informing my sort of take on where we're at right now. Um, that being consistency, right? So our goal now isn't own the most stores, it's own the most consistent stores. Meaning, okay, right now we have a store that's doing, let's say it's on average like 50K a month. Okay, what do we need to do to get that store over the 6-figure month? Except do that every single month of the year. And so that's kind of the challenge that we're tackling right now is let's get each store to 6 figures. If we can do that,
Gotcha.
that's like a multi-year goal, I think, to be honest, because it's not going to be quick. But I think if we can do that, that will really set us up well for if we want to buy another store or if we want to grow the team and sort of raise people up as leaders in the company. It gives us the flexibility to do that.
How many people do you have for 19 stores?
So let me preface this by saying we are hiring, but so right now, I want to say we're at 26 or 27, so almost at 30.
Still pretty goddamn good. That's like
Yeah.
that's pretty solid.
Yeah, so luckily we're very blessed. Our team is like absolutely dynamite. They're amazing. Um, but yeah, so in order to do the amount of volume that we want to do, it's definitely going to take more people for
Yeah.
sure. For sure. And I'm sure you've run into this too. Like it can be really challenging to find the right person with the right personality to put in the spot that you need to fill.
Right.
Tough, man.
It is tough. It is very tough. I mean, that like if you did that, if you can just do that part consistently, everything else I feel like is easy. I feel like that's the hardest
Mm,
part once you own the business, which is what I consider. There's like a
mm,
part where you are the business and then you become the business
right.
owner.
That's a
And
great
I
distinction.
feel like
Yeah.
I just hit that and you've been at that for a while.
Mm,
And that's the hardest part as the business owner.
that's a
Um,
great point. Yeah.
yeah, that's how I view it. When do you think that tenure hits? Because I sense that too. There's a point where the
Hmm.
employee like really starts hitting it. I
Yeah.
think it's what do you think? I think it's at like when they're really start hitting their stride, like the 4 to 5 months period.
Mhm.
What do you think?
Yeah, pretty much spot on with yours, to be honest. What I've seen just based on the data is it's typically between their third or fourth month and their fifth or sixth month. And that depends on how much outreach they're doing.
Right.
If they do more, they seem to hit that tenure faster just because they're getting more reps in.
Right.
And I think a lot of people miss that coming in is they're like, all right, I can kind of take it easy because I'm just getting started. It's like, no, dude, like you need to be going all in like from the get go. The beginning is the most critical time.
Right. No, I gotcha. Yeah, no, especially I mean, that's how I feel. And it's just interesting dealing with like the different types of personalities and figuring out how to get them working with each other. It's all pretty damn
Mhm.
fascinating. Like, um, so this is like a question I like to ask people is like if you could go back to yourself, I guess only 2 years ago, right when you met
Mhm.
Thomas and were like, all right, we're gonna do this. What's like the
Mhm.
one thing you would tell yourself now?
Ooh, that's a good one. There's so much and yet so little. Um, I think that I would probably say um, focus on the fundamentals more. Um, and I think the reason that I say that is when you grow anything, really, there's a tendency to sort of put your hands into every aspect of the business. And it's hard not to, right? Especially when you're still very much in the business.
Mm-hmm.
It's so hard to make that transition to on the business. Um, but I think if you focus on the fundamentals being like really what is the core of your business, like for us as KeyGlee, our value to the marketplace is we provide a service. we try to make it fancy, but it is what it is. We provide a service to sellers, agents, other wholesalers, and we provide a service to buyers and dispo agents and dispo wholesalers.
Right.
And it's very simple, really. But I think with scaling, there's a tendency to try to make it complicated or make it fancy or automate everything. But you don't really need that. If your business is fairly simple, which thankfully ours is, it doesn't have to be super complicated. And I think that was a mistake that I made, is I tried to make it too complicated or too sort of systematized, but it didn't
I'm
really.
interesting. What do you mean by that?
I think that looking back, I thought we needed to implement all of these things all at once. Like, we needed to implement a bunch of things from all the books that I had read. Like, okay, I've read about OKRs. Okay, I've read about the identify, discuss, solve meeting track, and running leadership meetings and running sales meetings. And those things have a ton of value, but their value is related to how big your team is. And when you're
Right.
small, you don't really need as much of that because your communication is so instant. Meetings and structure, a lot of that exists to sort of remedy communication loss that happens as you grow. And I think my thought was like, okay, we need it and we need it now.
Right.
Which we probably didn't need, to be honest. So I think when I say focus on the fundamentals, I think I maybe tried to make things too fancy too fast.
Right.
And so if I were to go back and be like, hey, Alex of 2 years ago, just focus on the basics. All of the fancy stuff can come later when you're bigger. You don't need that now. Just focus on the basics.
I like that. I think that's really good for people who are even just starting out too, because I feel like so many people are like, I can translate that to maybe not what you were saying, but just getting an LLC and like trying to get a podcast going, or like trying to freaking get I don't know, like get just like getting your assignment contracts and stuff. It's like, dude, like everybody has an assignment contract. That takes 5 seconds to get. Like, it's not going to be hard. Like the hard part is actually getting out and doing the work. So I like it. It's good advice in general. Cool, man. Well, we've hit an hour. Like, who are you hiring for right now? How can the people reach you? How can they, what are we plugging?
Yeah. First of all, that went super quick.
I know.
Holy smokes. Yeah, time flies, bro.
It does.
Like a wizard or something.
I sometimes put on a wizard robe. I think I was wearing it in Ryan's podcast that you watch.
Oh man, dude. Okay. If we ever do this again, you got to wear the robe, bro.
It's too hot here right now. And too hot for me. I'm in San Francisco, which is just like 75. So for me, for me, that's too hot to wear the wizard robe. So
I wish it was 75 here, bro.
Yeah, you guys are ridiculous. I don't understand how anyone lives in Phoenix. I wish you all lived somewhere like not as hot.
Me too, bro. Me too.
I love it. So, okay.
Okay. Question.
Plugging. Who are you hiring for? What are we plugging? How can the people reach you? These types of things.
What are we plugging? Okay. So we are plugging, first of all, we're plugging the pod. All right. We're plugging the Skorch the Fears podcast. Make sure you follow, subscribe, 100%. Like, all that good stuff.
Yeah, I got to say that more. Like, comment, and subscribe, guys. I keep forgetting to say that at any point. I forget that actually helps the YouTube algorithm.
Yeah, you're welcome, bro. I got you. But yes, so what we are hiring for right now is we are hiring for acquisitions. That is a huge need. And the reason why is because we have a ton of inbound traffic from Astro flipping students and sub 2 students. And it is incredible. It's amazing. And we want to be able to provide support to help students sell their deals. We're doing a ton of volume with Astro flipping students, but I know we can convert at a much higher level if we just have the people in place to really help nurture those leads as they come in. And right now we just don't have enough people to do that. And we're getting there. We're definitely getting there. We've got a phenomenal team, but it's going to take a whole village for sure to get to where we want to go. So if you're interested in that and you are in the Phoenix area or you're willing to relocate, definitely come on down. We would love to have you.
Where should they email? Like, who should they contact?
Yes, that is a great question. So if they're interested, they should email our HR guy. He's bomb, super cool. What is the best way to get that information out? Should I just say it?
No, just tell me. Tell me right now. I'm going to write it.
Okay. So the best way to reach our HR guy, so it's Jack, just exactly the way you think you should spell it, just Jack. So that's his email is Jack dot, and then his last name, Richey, RICHEY at KeyGlee.com. So he is the man, the myth, the legend.
Like that.
Yes, just like that. So,
okay.
Yeah, if you're looking to join the team, make sure to hit Jack up. He is a stud. And if you want to do deals with us, that's another thing. So go ahead.
I'm not saying anything. I'm listening. I mean, I'm also curious. I mean, like to do deals with you. I mean, you guys are in so many markets. Like you're going to have to like provide like a list or something. I know you're in Vegas. Mm-hmm. I know you're in Arizona. Who should they hit up to find out your different markets?
Yeah, that's a good question. So there's a couple different sort of lines of communication that we have, obviously, with different stores, but we do have a company line now, which has helped us tremendously. That number is 602-784-3800.
So what do? Do they call this number?
You can call it. You can text it. You can send lots of heart emojis. It's a real number. Like it's a real phone. Like someone actually has the phone on them at all times. So depending on the day, you might get me. You might get Thomas. We have like 4 or 5 different people who are always watching the phone. We've tried to use other things.
Wait, is it just like a phone in the office that eventually?
Yeah, it's literally like a physical. I think it's like
really funny.
Thomas's old iPhone, maybe.
That's hilarious.
But yeah, like we tried a bunch of different ways. Turns out a phone is just the best way to do it. So if you want to do deals with us, or find out what markets we're in, hit that up. Someone amazing, possibly me, possibly not, will respond or answer the phone and sort of direct you in the right way. Because yeah, we have people who sort of do deals in specific markets because they kind of specialize more. And then I also have actually a lot of students have been sending me deals on Instagram, which is bomb. Super fun.
Speaking of which, what's your Instagram, bro?
Yeah, so people. You can't haze me for it, all right? Because I made this when I was in high school. Okay. I've never changed it. So it's ABALLERZADO.
Love it.
Yep, that's your boy.
Like that?
Yep, that's me. So I actually have had a lot of students recently hit me up, and it's kind of cool because like I don't really give out my cell number just because I get so many spam calls and texts that like I never know if I should respond to people or not. But if someone hits me up on Instagram, I know that they're real, at least most of the time. So
and it's very easy to tell if they're not real. It takes like 5 seconds.
Yeah. So I've got peeps sending me deals in there. It's been bomb. We have little comping parties. It's great. Super fun. So yeah, if you want to like actually get me personally, that's the best way to do it for sure.
I love it. All right. Any last words?
Last words. Yes. So Jonah, you were bomb. You're amazing, amazing host. I look forward to saying that I was on this show once it topples the Joe Rogan show as the number
How
one
I
podcast.
wish. That would be hilarious.
We'll get there, bro. But yeah, seriously, like, appreciate you. Thank you for having me on. It was bomb. Everybody who's listening, make sure that you do all of the YouTube and social media things. So follow him,
Spotify, YouTube,
subscribe, listen, like,
yeah,
do all those things.
All of it.
Yeah, help my man grow because he's putting out content.
I love
all right.
it.
But yeah, seriously, like, thank you for having me on, bro. Absolute pleasure. I'm looking forward to seeing how our business grows, and the Astro community. You, Jamil, all of the students as a whole have been a huge part of helping us grow. And so, yeah, super, super grateful for it.
Thanks, man. Yeah, no, I'm 100%. I love seeing, like, I didn't actually know you were with Thomas. So when you said like 19 franchises when you were texting me, I'm like, oh damn, somebody else who's also
You're
got
like,
19 franchises.
What in the world?
Like, who could that be? So that makes sense to me. We'll have you and Thomas on sometime too, because it would be cool to see your guys' dynamics. But for sure. All right. You don't need to leave, but I'm gonna end the podcast now. I'm gonna end the live part.
Right on.
So, my guys, episode 34, Alex Balizado. We are ending it. It was an amazing one. I loved it. And I will see y'all next week. We've got the Bash Bros. If you guys know them, they are Sub-2 students. They are awesome. They're also in Phoenix. I really like them. I've just been on a rampage of interviewing people around my age because we're doper anyways. Like, I don't want those old people. Nobody does. So, anywho, I will see y'all next week, 5 p.m. PST. Let's go.